this edition of the Boob Two Buddies podcast featuring our discussion of the HBO show Westworld, episode 7, entitled Trompe l'Oeil, which is French for deceive the eye. My name is Foxman, and I'm joined by the little confederado to my big old ghost nation. What's going on, Mothman?
Little confederado. Jesus. I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Excellent. Really excited about this episode. We got a couple of interesting new things that we're adding to the mix here.
Yeah, there's some pretty intriguing things going on. And then there's also the William and Dolores plot.
Oh, no.
Right.
But I'm specifically talking about what Boob Tube Buddies is bringing to the table. We've got a special interview in the middle of this with somebody who had an incredible theory that we just basically did a quick 10-minute interview, which we'll put in right after the ad, which, by the way, we have our first dedicated sponsor this episode, which is really awesome. They reached out to us. We created our own flavor of an ad, which you'll hear in the middle, and it's going to be a cool episode. I'm excited.
It is going to be a pretty cool episode. Did you mention who our guest was? It's a Hillary Clinton strategist, and they have some theories. And we're going to see how they pan out.
That's not a thing. No, don't okay. Tune out everybody else. All right, so just a couple of quick bits of information. You guys can check out all of our content at www.boobtubebuddies.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Reddit, or just email us at boobtubebuddies@gmail.com. We really love getting your guys' theories up here, and we would just, anything you guys write in, it will get its way on air. We'll shout you out and make you part of the show.
Yeah, another thing to add as well is by the time this episode airs, you'll have a sweet kick-ass music video to our MIB spoof song that we premiered last week.
That's true. Yeah, that'll be up on our YouTube page and our Facebook page. And, we're probably going to try to send it around to see if we can get it to go semi-viral, which for us, semi-viral would be like 200 views. But yeah, seriously, check that out. The song itself was funny and awesome, but paired together with the video, it's like an actual enjoyable piece of media now that I think people will really get a kick out of.
I do really like that he actually paired up you saying fucking vacation and Man in Black saying it.
I don't know if you saw the document that I sent him with all the times from the show, but I literally wrote out if you could possibly sync up the fucking vacation part on there.
Awesome.
Like that was on my notes. Yeah.
The one thing I had him add, which I hadn't even seen the video, he just texted me at work saying it was almost done. I was like, oh, Fox probably didn't send this over, but there's a scene in the first episode during the climax and battle where some guy's face gets blown out. I was like,
yeah.
Can you just
it looks like paper mache.
I was like, can you just juxtapose that with any of his numerous scenes shooting something and make it look like he did it? Because it's a sweet shot.
That's like, really funny. I wondered about that. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Okay.
Anyway.
You know what? Really quick Westworld information first. Westworld has been officially picked up for a second season, which is amazing. But did you see that it's a 2018 release date that they're looking at?
Awesome.
Well, 2018 means not next year.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay.
It just means it's going to be big and beautiful and lots of money.
That's exactly
and
what they said.
Probably more. Maybe it will only be 10 episodes. It should be a 20-episode season.
Well, either way, we've seen that a shorter season, that they can be more on point anyway. So, but yeah, that is exactly why it's going to be 2018, because the scope of what they're looking to accomplish is big, apparently. And also super exciting, per Entertainment Weekly, this series is now averaging 11.7 million viewers across all the network's platforms, which is even more than Game of Thrones racked up during the first season.
You're saying 11 million?
11.7 million.
That's insane. Like, I don't have streaming data on like a lot of the shows we cover, but I know, for example, Preacher and Ash and Outcast and those shows were averaging like 500,000 to 1 million.
Exactly.
Now, granted, that's just when they premiere on TV, so you add streaming in, but I know none of them hold a candle to that. So
yes, it's huge, dude. And we are so fortunate that we're covering this because, man, it has been a fucking blast. The second last little thing, Thandie Newton, who you guys know as Maeve on the show, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Yes. No. God damn it. Yeah, Thandie Newton. Isn't that what I said?
I thought you said Thandie.
I probably did.
Thandie,
I definitely said Thandie.
A pecan Thandie Newton.
Suck my dick, you piece of shit. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in a Drama Series for Westworld by the Critics' Choice Awards, which is cool. I'm sure that there's going to be a hell of a lot more nominations than that in all the award shows coming up.
Yeah, she was on Colbert the other night and was a pretty entertaining guest.
Oh my gosh, she's fucking awesome on the show. But okay, real quick, why don't you just give a quick blast to the other shows that we're doing, and then let's hop into it, because we got a fucking lot to break down.
Fuck yeah, we do. By the time anyone can hear this, the next day or two, we will have the season finale of American Horror Story coming out by the Boob Tube Betties. We also have Walking Dead that'll come out almost in tandem with this episode. We'll have another Ash vs. Evil Dead coming out this weekend. Divorce is also probably available soon or coming out soon by the time you hear this.
Within a day of this.
Yeah. And then we're also doing Doctor Strange this week, and then we will finalize Luke Cage. So a lot of great stuff coming out from the Boob Tube Buddies. But without further ado, let's get to the boringest plot of the episode.
Just because I know how much you hate it, I figured we'd just get it out of the way. You okay with that?
Yeah, let's just, god damn it, let's stomach it.
All right, so Lawrence, William, and Dolores, and just so everybody knows, Mothman fucking hates William. So actually, you don't even really love Dolores.
No.
No.
Yeah, I
No,
mean,
you don't.
I really like the aspect of her, like the first almost sentient robot that you're exposed to as an audience. But Maeve has definitely surpassed her.
Yeah, I mean, especially, yeah, I get that. After she, I was going to say turned Maeve on, I'm sure that there's a better, I'm sure there's a better way to frame it. Honestly, I forgot to turn down your sensuality attribute meter before this, and I really wish that I had.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that, we didn't do that, did we?
Honest to God, I thought about it today, and I thought, between the interview and the new ad, and we wouldn't really have time. We could do that next week.
Next week.
But okay, so they're on the train. We don't have to get too much into it, but basically they're chatting it up, and Dolores sees heads on spikes outside of the train, and Lawrence pulls down the bulletproof covers over the windows, and I thought that was like a cool little thing to see how it is. But of course, it's not like this whole train is bulletproof. Just the
moment that happened, and then there's obviously the scene later with the Gatling gun. But the moment that happened, I was like, "But isn't the rest of the train still mostly like wood?" From the look of it.
I guess it makes sense though, because you'd be firing back through the window holes. So
they'd concentrate their fire there. Yeah, I mean it's definitely better than nothing. But Lawrence is basically saying like, look, don't take it personally. I double-crossed you just like I double-cross anyone. It wasn't about you two in particular. They drop those down. They know they're getting into this terrifying territory. And then
Ghost Nation.
Yeah, which they are super cool.
Oh my God.
They're a favorite part about this. We've seen
them.
Yeah, we've seen this in the Maeve's Reveries early on. But then we get just the worst shit in the world. Like, honestly, to me, this is the cheesiest, worst acting out of the whole entire series is these next two scenes.
Okay, so let's just run through it real quick. So basically, he tells her, about how he felt different growing up and about how he's getting married to Logan's sister. And then she tries to play it cool and then has,
she's upset.
A little breakdown. Yeah, so she runs off. He decides that he's going to get up and run after her. And he's like, Dolores, I built my life pretending to fit in. And I got the life that I always wanted. But now I'm here and I don't have to pretend. I can be truly alive.
Yeah, and then they start kissing. It's the worst. And my favorite part about it, though, is that we get to see William, like, at least in my mind, knocked off his moral high horse, because the whole...
I'm sorry, knocked off of his...
Moral high horse.
I just love that on the word...
Rocco! It didn't go high at all this time. It went low.
Play back that tape.
No, I don't have that tape. If you play it back, I was being super nice the whole time.
This will just be like, before the show, I was trying to get Mothman to actually give me props on setting up a nice interview, and he's like, I did. And I was like, go back and check the messaging app.
And there was no niceties at all.
We spent 5 minutes scrolling through, checking the conversation. No compliments.
Is earlier we did like a sound check just to make sure the interview would work with like three-way calling. And he asked if I was proud of him, and I just denied it. I was like, well, I mean, I appreciate you.
That's exactly it.
So anyway, moving past that, now you kind of understand at a deeper level why he treats me the way I do and why I just take it. Anyway, It's so funny. William continues to kind of be on this moral high horse. He doesn't want to sleep with any of the women. He had to kind of be pushed to the edge to kill. But knowing he is okay sleeping with a robot, when it definitely would count as cheating.
Under what guise are you saying? Like,
just the fact that like there's a legitimate like emotional connection and wants this over his real world,
agreed. No, it's an emotional affair now attached with what would just
on
be
top
like,
of what would be not even like prostitution, which that's a whole nother debate, but like that's at least another human with feelings. But the idea of this theme park is it's all for fun games. It's a game, but like he's gone head over heels, totally is cheating. In my mind, this is worse than just like the banging gallivanting that Logan was doing.
Yeah, because that's basically the equivalent of using like a fleshlight, whereas this is actually like, he's connecting. But anyway, I'm sure you don't want to get too much into that. So he wakes up the next day or whenever, and Dolores is painting something, which actually is the exact same scene that we end up seeing when they part ways with Lawrence later, like the valley that they're looking down on. This is that. Yeah,
that's what she's drawing in like charcoal on a sheet.
Yes, and so they have like another little moment, but then all of a sudden, and thank God because we can get down to some cool action here, seriously, the train screeches to a halt, and the Confederados have blocked the tracks, and they pulled up with their big old mounted gun, and they just start.
Yeah, it's an old style Gatling gun like we've seen Teddy use. I was actually surprised at first when it was Confederados because I thought it would be the Scalpers, the Ghost Nation, but it's not. And then they get out of it in kind of a lame way. Like, one, I do not remember from your note, who's El Lazo?
El Lazo is Lawrence. Okay, so you don't have to sit here and falter through my notes real quick. Here's what I'm saying.
Okay, this makes sense then either way. So you can maybe explain a little more, but they open the gate to the train and push out someone on a horse filled perfectly with explosives, and I don't know, the whole thing was bad.
Yeah, but we saw that happen. I'm just saying, like, at the very least, even if you don't like the way that it happened, we saw. Okay, so when the Confederados realized that there's tequila in the things, we had seen him put the liquid, whatever, explosives into the corpses. So there was at least groundwork laid for this. So that corpse was filled with that explosive stuff. We saw that happen 2 episodes ago.
How long did it take?
I don't know, a while. They were pumping it in with tubes and shit like that.
But you're saying this is Lawrence's dead body who was just alive a minute ago?
No. El Lazo's sending his dead buddy, if you're reading the notes, by the way, is what it said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. Gotcha.
So anyway, he goes out, El Lazo, or Lawrence, as they're calling him now, shoots the body after he says, like, "Vayo con Dios, motherfucker." And then it explodes, which, by the way, I think that it would have been a lot better if that horse had gone a little bit closer to the Confederados.
I know,
as opposed
right?
to being 30
3
feet
of them
away.
Over. Yeah, and then, like 2 in the back, it was just like a brisk wind.
That was unfortunate, but I mean, Lawrence can't control that, so what are you going to do? But
sure.
So then they use this as their diversion to be able to get onto their horses, come flying out of the train and running off, and the chase is on. The Confederados are right on their tail. At one point, Dolores actually falls off, and William, there's a little bit of tension there because bullets are flying around, everybody's dying.
Well, there's a whole Gatling gun being unloaded on them, as well as everyone else shooting, and somehow none of them get hit. Like, him I see not getting hit. He's a guest, so there might be protections against it, but the fact that Dolores didn't, I didn't buy or enjoy.
Even that could still be a part of it because everything's being orchestrated a little bit. So like they could make it so that she wouldn't get hit by any bullets. But
she's not supposed to be part of the storyline, right?
But she is now, and we've seen that they tamper with everything that's happening to create urgencies and to play into their experience. So her like being along for the ride and him developing feelings, like I feel like that type of thing is being monitored on some level, and if they were supporting that by not letting her die, I'm just saying that to me didn't bug me at all. I agree in a normal situation, if 2 people were riding like that and they didn't get hit with a fucking Gatling gun, it'd be ridiculous. But in a place that is so fabricated and controlled and micromanaged, I could set that aside.
And I guess I could understand that, and I'm not saying that doesn't make any sense, but maybe what they should consider is the primary audience, which is us, and the fact that that was boring.
Okay. I didn't find any of this boring because a moment later, Ghost Nation,
That's when it got exciting.
Yes, comes charging in and just laying waste to those miserable little Mothmans. And so Dolores, William, and Lawrence end up absconding off totally unharmed. And they end up on this cliffside, and it's looking out on, like I said, the scene from the charcoal drawing that Dolores had done earlier on that tapestry.
And it's uncharted territory. So it's
unclaimed.
Like, yeah, like a hidden mission almost type thing. So we'll see. We'll see where that pans out. Maybe more to the maze.
And exactly. And speaking of maze, now we're on to Maeve. Now that is a really bad transition.
That was a good segue.
Non sequiturs.
Maeve awakens in her bed. She goes to the salon. Piano's playing.
Saloon. She goes to the salon.
Yeah, she goes to the salon. She gets her hair done. She gets her hair did. Her did. She turns the piano off, which I thought was interesting because it's like a common motif that we see every single time.
I went looking online to find out what song this is. All it was like one of the common string music sort of things that they have in their score, basically turned into like a saloon piano jig.
Maybe they thought since she was turning it off and there wasn't, like, it didn't go on very long, they didn't want to use a licensing or whatever.
Or make it seem insulting to whoever the musician was.
Oh, Jesus, turn that one off.
Shit off.
This isn't Radiohead? I don't understand.
Exactly.
So
the porno for pyro is gross.
Right. So Clementine is, giving her backstory and talking to Maeve. Maeve seems very checked out just because she at this point is aware and a 20 in terms of intelligence.
Yeah, but Clementine does say one thing that I thought was interesting here. She's, because talking about the shitty farm and the bad soil, and she says she wants to move somewhere cold, which I'm pretty sure that's exactly where she's going to end up. Cold storage at Delos, motherfucker.
In the freezer. So as this conversation is happening, they do a pretty good job of building tension because the whatever they actually call these people, the science team,
the technicians,
they think they had that one episode where it was almost worked into the Native American mythology, but they all come in and you swear they're gonna grab Maeve, and there's even commentary like, I don't know, she must have done something pretty bad for us to have to grab her in broad daylight. Like for them
she's
to
over there at the
interrupt
bar.
A simulation. And so she actually grabs a really sharp knife at the bar because someone was eating, I don't know, like a really coarse cheese or something. And you think
a weird level of detail.
Well, I mean, for the knife to be that sharp, because I think it was like bread on the plate. Anyway. But looks like she's going to stab one of these technicians. But sure enough, they actually grab Clementine, which you weren't expecting.
Not at all. Okay, so the next scene with her, we get Maeve is on a table being examined by Felix and some lady technician. She wakes up, but he kind of like basically squelches things real quick and gets the other lady out of there first. And she wants him to locate Clementine, so he ends up walking her up there, and she is totes snakies.
Yeah,
and
that part was funny to me just because last time they did that, we were talking about how believable it was. And that's when she had the nightie on and like walking through the iPad. And I was okay with it. You were a little less okay with it. But then when they did it again, I was like, yeah, this probably isn't that believable. He would have gotten caught.
You're saying when she had the nightie on last time?
Well, no, nightie on, I was like, well, whatever. But then he just does it again. Like he says we shouldn't go up there. And, she's almost threatening to him. So he's basically done a second walkthrough with Maeve.
The only one that made this one slightly more palatable for me is that they do show another technician walking by with a pad in the background that has a naked host with him. So at least to me, that one was more believable. But we know that that management here doesn't really like them being paraded around with their clothes on. So, like, that's why, to me, that really stood out last episode. This one, her walking around in her birthday suit, it just rang truer with the background of it. But I am with you. I think that every time they do it, it's stupid. But, of course, he has his reservations, so that is played out on screen.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of this episode that's stupid, wouldn't you agree?
No, stop it. Keep going.
But, hey, it gets a lot better later. Anyway, so they're going through there, and you actually see... and they make some mentions of this throughout the episode, but they're basically giving the robots a lobotomy. So they
Yeah.
just like old school mummification, you'd stick a giant like hook up the nose and pull the brain out. He goes a drill up through Clementine's, whatever type of things in there. You think of these Generation 1s, it looks like almost the Terminator machine, but these are very much organic. So I guess there's actually a brain up in there. There's almost no blood until the very end when it comes out, and there's like one solid like stream coming out of her.
Yeah, just
and
like
Maeve watches.
a most beautiful ruby red. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Crimson delight.
Okay, fucking creep.
Yeah.
So anyway, Felix and Maeve continue on, and it was, by the way, Sylvester that did this under Teresa's supervision, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but Bernard actually comes in and pulls her aside, and that's what ends up leading to their conversation that takes them out of Delos there towards the end. But sticking with this plot line, we get Maeve, Felix, and Sylvester down in the basement, and Sly is like, listen, I did not want to retire her. I know she's like, your little buddy or something, but they just found someone else to do it and would have been suspicious of me, said every Nazi in the 40s.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey, I was just following orders, guys.
Exactly.
I didn't put him in office 20 years ago. I just wanted to keep my job. Anyway, no one will ever be saying that soon in America.
No, yeah, but yeah, nice. But so she wants to get out. She's like, I'm done just surviving. I want to get out of here. And Sylvester's like, no, like, you don't understand. Every part of you is designed, even the fucking skin on you is made to keep you here. It would be a suicide mission. And she has a great line.
You think I'm scared of death?
I've done it a million times and I'm fucking great at it. How many times have you died? Because if you don't help me, I'll kill you.
How many times have you died? Because if you don't help me, I'll kill you.
That's pretty good.
I don't know about that, but I try.
I think that you're doing a great job, man. I'm really proud of you.
So that was like a nice like intense into it, but that's the last we get. So that's like, I don't know, each episode they keep upping the ante on Maeve, and at this point she's gone full rogue and committed to the suicide mission. So I'm pretty excited how shit's just going to continue to hit the fan from all areas in the next few episodes.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. And I'm also excited that we managed to power through these plot lines, because we'll throw to actually not an Audible ad, we'll throw to our dedicated sponsors ad, which, by the way, let's talk about it real quick, just because it's a new thing for us. And the app is FireFan, and essentially it's like okay, for everybody out there, before I did this podcast, and I still do it sometimes, I co-host a Dynasty fantasy basketball podcast. I love basketball. I love fantasy sports. And so this app kind of like takes it to the next level of you getting to control substitutions, and you're really part of the game, like play calling, all that stuff. It's like a hyper immersive sports app, and is cutting edge. It's coming out actually not even for like another week or two, and we were approached by one of the affiliates basically for this app. And so I think that kind of sets the stage a little bit here. But I was excited because this is something, I mean, probably not quite as much for Mothman, but for people like me that, just being honest, for people like me that love sports, things like this are just really fun. Like, I'd prefer doing something like this over like a Candy Crush or something. Like this to me is like my type of phone game. So without further ado, Mothman, you okay if we cut to the ad now?
Yeah, I mean, I will just say it's kind of a cool concept. Obviously, I'm not much one for sports. At the same time, the idea of being able to, I don't know, like, spend a little scratch and if possible, and maybe win a few bucks on something that you're excited to be watching. So, like, recently for me, I think of doing that for, like, say, an election, but also I have a guilty pleasure sport-wise for American Ninja Warrior. So I think to an extent, even though I'm not into sports like you are, I can also relate to like a high stakes kind of putting skin in the game, and being able to do that on a weekly basis in a game like setting, because I do absolutely love games. So, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with fantasy sports is they are not quite as multidimensional as what this app is shaping up to be. So, without further ado, let's cut to it. This is a special tailor-made ad that we created. We were kind of told what the concept was and then given carte blanche to make what we would of it. And I think, as always with our ads, it's fucking stupid, but kind of awesome. So go ahead and play it.
All right. Play.
What kind of fan are you? Do you scream at the players through your television?
What the f*** are you doing? Throw the ball! Come on.
Do you predict the plays?
Saw that one coming. How does this bag still have a job?
Do you want to be buried upside down so the critics can kiss your ass? Then listen up. If you got a burning passion for sports, then the new sporting game app FireFan is for you. You get to be in charge of the action, predict the scores, call the plays, all in real time.
FireFan.
The FireFan app launches on the week of November 21st, and you can get 12 free tokens by using the player rewards code HALEY. That's HALEY. You can sign up for the app early at our affiliate's website, www.haleyIsaDog.com. That's HALEYISADOG.com. The app is FireFan, and the code is HALEY.
Welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed that brand spanking new musical audio ad, which we do a pretty good job of. But it's amazing that we're getting to cut to something else now.
Yeah, this, like I said earlier, this is a cool episode for us. I mean, this is kind of new. We got to have the dedicated ad right there, which, by the way, thank you, FireFan, and thank you, the affiliate who approached us is Michael, and the Haley is a dog. By the way, his dog's name is Haley, so that's his website that basically links directly in for you to get those free tokens. So yeah, go to www.haleyIsaDog.com to get in on FireFan before anybody else. Like, it's pretty awesome. But like you were saying, we're going to cut right now to an interview that we had. I'd probably explain it in the beginning of it, so we can just cut straight to the audio for it. But it is somebody that we reached out to that we thought had an awesome theory. So we wanted him to explain it, and here we go.
All right, we'll be right back again.
All right, we are joined by Ryan, whom I had met through a Reddit post. He wrote something really interesting. I don't know, for anybody who's been deep diving on the internet, there's this theory that is aptly named the Bernarnold theory, and I had not seen it put quite so eloquently or just extensively. So we decided we'd get Ryan on here first. Let me just say, what's going on? How you doing, Ryan?
Hey guys, glad to be here. I don't know that anyone's ever called me eloquent, but I do apprate that.
Very eloquent, yes. Beautifully put.
We like to keep on the compliments.
I was telling Ryan beforehand when we first basically met via Skype here that I was thrilled that he didn't sound like he had a helium voice or something.
It's a pretty serious concern when you go to random people on the internet that you might get a helium voice on the other end.
Yeah, it certainly is. But okay, let's hop into it a little bit. So first, just kind of explain what the Bernarnold theory is, just as a basic thing for anybody who hasn't heard of it, and then just a little bit of like the evidence that you had posted, and we'll ask you a couple of follow-up questions.
So first off, I love that Bernarnold took off because I completely didn't intend for it to. The title of my post was actually just "The Truth About Bernard. He is actually ... And I think in there one time I just peppered in Bernarnold. I won't claim that I came up with that at all. I read it in another post, and I think I peppered it in, just kind of loving it. But just real briefly, I've been watching the show since the jump, obviously, and a show like Westworld, you're just waiting on that moment where someone is a host that you don't expect them to be. Like, you've been looking for it ever since episode 1, and I'm sure just like you guys are in group messages with a bunch of my friends, and we always talk theory, and we're always just trying to one-up each other with the ridiculous theories. And one that I got stuck on early, and it's not that ridiculous, was that Bernard was a host. And so as I watched the show, I just began looking for the little clues. And you find yourself, even if he's not the main character in a scene, you find yourself watching him like, what's he doing in the background? Is he doing something host-like? So this post is a product of me being obsessive about trying to find Bernard's flaws and host-like tendencies.
Okay, so what were some of the things that you noticed that kind of started to piece together, like actually give evidence to the theory?
Sure. So I think in the post, and to be honest with you, I didn't intend to post this on the internet to begin with. I just started typing it up to send to my friends who were constantly asking me questions about it. But to begin with, I started the post with a couple easy things. I wanted to start with a flashback The flashback is the scene that we actually saw in a preview before the season started. It hasn't actually been in the show yet. The scene where we see Dolores being built. We see her head literally being placed on her shoulders. And all you can see in this image, and I think it literally lasted maybe a half second in the preview, was just the hands putting Dolores' head on. And all I noted was that it seems like a similar skin color to Bernard.
Now, what was the reaction to that on Reddit?
There was a few different reactions. The immediate reaction was, of course, there's only one black guy on the whole show. Of course you think it's him. Most of the posts, there was one really funny post about it. It was very tongue-in-cheek. I enjoyed it. But I did get a lot of backlash on that one. But just to say, it was only one piece of many pieces of evidence that I came up with. So it wasn't holstered on that idea.
Yeah, to be fair, like to put it mildly, I would say that it went under a little bit of scrutiny.
Yeah,
Right?
You could say that, yeah.
But like you said, this was just one small aspect of a much larger picture that you were painting here.
Exactly. And that was literally the first one that I put. I was like, I just want to put some visual evidence out there. But number 2, the next piece of evidence I came up with was the voice. So we heard that voice a few times throughout the show. I want to say that it was episode 2 where it started off with Dolores waking up in bed and you heard this mechanical, weird, deep, demonic voice saying, "Wake up," to her. And then she woke up, walked outside to, if I remember correctly, like a hay bale or a pile of hay where...
the gun?
And then yes, she found the gun. And then it said, "Do you remember?" And then it immediately flashed back to William and Logan coming in on the train, which is a different theory. We won't dive into that today.
Multiple timeline theory?
Yeah, exactly.
We could be here all day doing that.
I know, but simply the voice, to me, was pretty obvious. It's Jeffrey Wright's Bernard, the actor. It's his voice. It's very clear. It sounds to me like it's his voice with another computer voice kind of over the top of it. And that's one of those things that I just kind of have to tell people to listen to it. I can't really show you proof or anything. I think I linked a YouTube video in there for them to listen and check that out.
Yeah, and we'll link to your post, if that's okay with you, probably in the description of the show, and maybe even have you tell people what the title of it was at the end of this so that they can look it up, because it really is worth actually looking at the evidence and then hearing the evidence, because you're right, it does sound like it.
Right, I agree. And that's just not something you can write in words to someone. They just need to listen to it.
For sure. Okay, so what else you got?
Okay, so the photograph. In episode 3, we had a brief interaction between Ford and Bernard. I think they were in Ford's actual office in what seems like the real Westworld facility, not this off-site cabin that we've now seen him in.
Yes.
There's a brief interaction where Ford says, hands Bernard a picture and says, "This is his business partner, Arnold." And we see this photo, and it has 2 people in it. One, we know is a young Ford because they did excellent CGI, and Anthony Hopkins looks like Anthony Hopkins.
It's incredible.
It is amazing.
It's incredible. I was blown away.
Yeah.
Number 2, we learned in episode 5, at least as far as we can tell, is Ford's dad. And Bernard walked into that cabin that episode and immediately asked, "Are you Arnold?" because he had seen this photo.
And had been told basically that it was Arnold.
Exactly. So he asked the host of Ford's father, "Are you Arnold?" And the host responded, "Who the hell is Arnold?" Which to me says, okay, he's not Arnold because he would have responded so. His son, a.k.a. Ford's brother, is not Arnold because he would have responded so. So the only thing that means to me is there has to be a third person in that picture.
Sure.
There's
And
no
the hosts
reason.
aren't able to see things like that.
Exactly. So in episode 1, we also saw, the only other photograph in the show that a host has seen, Dolores couldn't see it. So 2 and 2 together. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. I am definitely with that. So, and that is basically, that's in a nutshell what your theory was, right? Were there any other components?
Okay, so those were the 3 warm-up ones. The big one, the massive one for me, the one that put it all over for me was actually, I had to give credit to one of my friends because he mentioned it casually to me. I think I said at one point in one of the group message I mentioned, I think that Bernard is Arnold. And he goes, "If that's true, that means those one-on-ones are probably Arnold in the past." And I went, whoa. Yeah. So I immediately went back and watched. There's 4 interactions between just Dolores and Bernard, who I think is Arnold in this theory. And one was in episode 2, 2 were in episode 3, and 1 was in episode 4. And throughout the progression of these conversations, you could see every quality we've learned about what Arnold is supposed to be develop. He's supposed to
humanizing
be
part, leaving her in her
exactly,
clothes.
exactly. I loved that part. That was one of my favorite details. The humanizing thing, and gradually, I think I laid it out in the post. The first one is introductory. The second one, he starts to try to bring out he's clearly seeking artificial intelligence or some kind of, intelligent robot. The second one, he tries to bring that out in her. The third one, he starts to get a little desperate, a little scared that Ford might be onto him. He considers erasing her memory. She then says something, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something very unexpected and borderline human. And you could just see his eyes light up, and he immediately decided not to erase her memory. And then in the fourth one, he outright tells Dolores about the maze and to play the game. And as far as we know, Bernard, the host, knows nothing about the maze. There's been nothing to lead us down that route. So for me, that moment, him talking about the maze was like, oh, this is Arnold 35 years ago.
Now, to roll in something that happened in this most recent episode that I think really helps support it is, okay, so definitely this basement in the cabin is where he was having the conversations with Dolores, it seems like. And there is equipment now in it synthesizing new hosts, whereas obviously it's empty when Bernard was speaking to her. So that definitely leads you to believe that it happened a while back, and it by itself wouldn't necessarily point to Bernard, but is just yet another little notch on the belt of that.
I think by itself, that fact alone, I actually wrote a separate post on this. It didn't go quite as crazy as the first one did. By itself, that room being the same means that Bernard is a host. Sure. Because we can see that there's an older version and a newer version of the room. In the older version, we see Bernard, a.k.a. Arnold. And in the newer version, we see Ford as we know him to be now. That means in itself that time has passed and Bernard hasn't aged. That alone means he's a host.
And I will say, as I listened to your theory, or read your theory the first time, I remember, I think it was the first episode, we immediately were discussing, who's Arnold? We immediately were talking about, maybe the Man in Black had his, is Arnold with his consciousness moved in? They make you want to figure out who Arnold is so early on. Exactly. But then as you go through the evidence, it keeps adding up. And honestly, up until this episode, the only qualm I had, and it did make sense to an extent, was, well, what about the family? That's kind of weird, right? But, I love that that's kind of the primary concerns and almost reasoning of Bernard when he realizes he's a robot is, but I have a wife and kids.
Yeah. Oh man, that was heartbreaking. The look on his face.
That was a dark scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dark scene, but it's just that Ford obviously completely built this reality for him, this narrative. And at this point, one, I think your theory is completely supported, even more so. But two, you really just are second guessing everything now.
100%.
Man, I have to say,
everything in the show.
I reached out to Ryan at the end of last week, and there was a very real concern that either his theory was going to be proven so completely right on Sunday that it wouldn't even be worth talking about, or that it would be completely dispelled. So we were definitely waiting with bated breath last night to see how that played out.
The reality is we fell somewhere in the middle. They proved half of it.
That's exactly. It was ideal.
This was.
It worked out pretty well in that regard.
Also, Mothman, do you have any last follow? Because I think that pretty well rounded it out. Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, like we discussed last week, my biggest question was, what do you think the explanation is for the family and the dead son? But it's obviously just this narrative that he built in, and he uses the dead son as almost one of his numerous triggers to kind of get an emotional reaction. I think some of those questions have been answered. So if anything, those questions went away because this episode has kind of further cemented it. So I just appreciate you being here and kind of dissecting it. And I love the level of detail you took to this because, we kind of just spitball on air and kind of come up with theories, but to really have the evidence and connect everything, pretty solid work.
The visual and the audio really sold it for me.
Seriously,
so what was the name of that post so that people can go onto Reddit and search it?
Sure, let me find it. It is called The Truth Behind Bernard. He is actually ...
Perfect. Okay, and we will link to it in the show notes too. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on, man. I love the theory, and maybe we can have you back on again when you blow the lid off some other mystery.
I think this might be a one-time thing, but I do appreciate it, boys. I really do.
Absolutely, Ryan. Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
See you guys.
Later, man. All right, we're back from our correspondence piece. I'm glad we started doing something like that. Great job to Foxman for finding this guy on Reddit. I'm really super proud of him.
Wow. Hey, you know what? It feels good to hear you say that no matter how much sarcasm was dripping off of that. You rotten son of a bitch.
I think the important part is that I said it unwarranted.
That is true. Well, it's not unwarranted. We were just making fun of it.
Unprovoked.
Yeah, okay,
Unprovoked.
Sure.
No spurring,
it didn't
ribbing.
feel that good, but
right? That's what I'm saying. It doesn't even do that much good. It's like a
if I didn't have to
high,
complain for it, if I didn't have to complain to make you do it, it'd probably feel better. But anyway, our personal squabbles aside, thank you to Ryan for taking the time to come on the podcast. We were thrilled that he was actually articulate, and because we were basically reaching out to somebody who had put something nice in writing. For all we know, he was going to be a total fucking creep, but he wasn't. It was awesome. We ended up chatting with him for a while, even off air, and cool dude for sure. So, and I think we got a new listener out of him too. So, pretty awesome. But okay, let's jump seamlessly from that into the Bernard, Ford, and Teresa plotline.
Let's do that. We have Bernard dreaming about reading with his son in the hospital. He's oh god, my throat.
I hate it, dude. Oh my god.
He's reading
fucking
from
Lauren Hill over here. Drink some
Jesus.
goddamn tea during the podcast.
I like to say goodbye when I choke. Macy Gray, you mean? Racist. Right?
I don't know. I was trying to think of a Louis Armstrong song and I couldn't think of anything.
Skies are blue. Anyway. That's actually pretty good. So he's reading Alice in Wonderland. The reason that's significant is this is the book that he gave Dolores once upon a time. And it even has a little quote in there. If I had a world of my own, let me try doing it as Bernard. If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense. Nothing would be what it is. Because everything would be what it isn't.
Okay, that was actually not too bad. It started off with a British little accent to it, but you hopped out of that pretty quickly. Good job, man.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And his son then dies.
Basically, yes. Okay,
I think it's almost like he's passing out, but I just took that as that's his memory of his son just finally dying on life support, who was terminally ill.
You know, one other thing that happened here is this is how the show opens, I think, is with this scene. Every other time that we've had somebody wake up out of a dream sequence in the beginning of an episode, it was a host having like a reverie type dream, which makes a hell of a lot more sense after the end of the episode. But
and there's even dialogue in the series about like, why the hell would you make them dream? Like, well, no, they don't dream. They have the concept of dreaming, and there's kind of been that whole dialogue the whole show. So
yeah,
that's not something I picked up on at all. Like my big thing we'll get to later is the door.
Okay, yeah. I got a whole bit about the door too. I'm excited to talk about that. But okay, so we get Bernard questioning Hector in the laboratory, and Hector seems like he's fine with everything. He shows him some modern images, and Hector says the very cliche, which we'll hear again in this episode, doesn't look like anything to me. And then a guy comes in, and Bernard asks him about Elsie, who is apparently still missing. So I just bring that up because that is really the only bit that we get about that from last episode.
And by cliche, like this is just something, is this just the standard phrase that they use throughout the series when they don't notice something?
This is what hosts use when they're looking at something that they're not programmed to see.
I was making sure this wasn't a like pop culture reference they took, and I was like, I somehow just doesn't ring a bell to me. Can you imagine if that was a adage?
Doesn't look like anything to me.
Yeah.
I feel like that's basically the story of my life.
Yeah, actually, I think that's just my approach to like showing gratitude.
That we should pivot and change the name of our podcast. It doesn't look like anything to me.
Yeah, we probably should. So Bernard is worrying about Elsie, who was, kidnapped last episode by not the man in black, but someone wearing black. So he is now going to speak to Teresa. She just gives him a hard time, straight to business, fairly cold. Like, your department's running behind.
Yeah, there's not much to it. I mean, basically, Go ahead.
I was saying the only thing to it in my mind is just the fact that he asked her almost to dinner, and you do see that like glimmer, and she smiles, but then she's like stuck doing her job.
Yeah, and things change pretty quickly because she walks up to the board member. Her last name's Hale. That she walks up to her room. She's loudly having sex with Hector, and so the board lady invites her in, totally naked. And then she turns Hector off, and she's dressing her down. She's pissed about the woodcutter incident and Ford's recent endeavors and expenditures. And can I just say, I don't even know if it's so much her age, but the fact that she is kind of a little bit volatile, she doesn't really embody the qualities of what you would think that like a high level board member at like a multi-billion-dollar company like Delos would be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, board members are just one of those things where I don't have too much of a preconceived notion, because I don't think I've ever met one other than like maybe local government. So I don't know. I think there's a tendency just to kind of think of them as like straightforward, brass tacks, like abrasive individuals. And not that you can't be very successful when you're young, but just like the age thing. And I don't think they've really given us a net worth on Delos, but just judging by the technology and kind of what we extrapolate based on how much that would cost now, it doesn't seem the most likely that she would just be this high-ranking board member unless she, I don't know, was...
Nepotism?
Yeah, nepotism. Like, she is the daughter of someone high-ranking and is just kind of...
Like a Logan.
Been given that. Yeah, she's like a Logan. Yeah.
What if she was, what if that was Williams? Oh, wait, you know what? No, they say her name at some point. That would have registered, so never mind. But okay, so...
Oh, yeah.
She dresses her down about the woodcutter incident and Ford's recent expenditures. She asked Teresa for a cigarette and even mentions something about her having quit and taken it back up, which makes me, like, just another thing about, I don't know, them kind of... keeping tabs on people, knowing that she quit and then started back. It was a subtle detail to me, but
wait, she said, I must have misheard it. I thought I thought the board member was saying she used to quit.
I think she says something along the lines of Teresa having quit and then brought it back up. Watching the episode right now, I couldn't tell you that for sure. But after 2 listens, that was my takeaway, or 2 views.
Sure. So I think the only other piece here is that, what's her name? Hale says the gods require a blood sacrifice to make this right.
Yeah, well, and then the only other thing, or in the first episode, we have Teresa talking with Lee Sizemore out on the terrace of Mesa, which is the Delos headquarters, and he's saying, I know that there's more levels to what they're looking to do here other than just entertain the guests. And so Hale says something to that effect here about...
Well, yeah, it's about the data.
Yeah, it's all about the code. It's not about the hosts or the storylines. They want to push Ford out, but they need to make sure that all the information has been backed up so he can't, like, sabotage and basically go scorched earth when they try to, help push him out. So, like you said, the gods require a blood sacrifice, specifically worded that way because we hear that stated again later on.
Yeah, so the takeaway really is simply that we already knew Teresa had to do with the backing up of data and the like uplinks, but now we know the reason why.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly right. She is basically praying to the corporate overlords. So let's get to the presentation that they put on.
Oh my God. It's so gorgeous. They have a PowerPoint and everything. They're well prepared.
Don't you son of a bitch. Don't you do this.
What? I mean, and instead of just like, I don't know, they do a good job of not only presenting relevant information,
sometimes, Mothman,
but they ask the right questions. Anyway, it's poignant. They both wear their power clothes to get the point across.
Please, you gotta drop this right
and
now.
The synergy is at an all-time high. Anyway,
oh my God, there's this great
keynotes.
scene in 30 Rock that gets me every time. It's Jack takes Liz Lemon to some seminar for Six Sigma and like it's a corporate retreat. And one of the steps to like achieve great power in business, they're like going through all the things, and one of them is handshakefulness. And I think about it every time because like, I work in like a business development type setting, and so Six Sigma is something that we hear about, like processes in business. And
Sure.
Every time I start hearing about it, I think about handshakefulness.
Yeah.
I thought about that because you were talking about the synergy and all that other stuff. But okay, so the actual fucking presentation, man. Let's get to it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one of the slides is pretty impactful, and it's basically a real life presentation
I'm cutting
of
in
Clementine.
Okay.
And
Okay, there you go.
Clementine is with this, I don't know, what we find out is a host, it's an Asian host that just beats the shit out of her. And she basically just cries and begs and has a terrible time, and it's hard to watch. And
her eyes are so watery all the time anyway, even when she's not upset. Like, when she starts crying, it's seriously like a well in her eyes.
Yeah, so obviously she's not having a good time, and then the narration as they go over this presentation is
Obviously
simply that
not having a good time.
that we found out is that they say erase her memory, and then they bring up the part that all these anomalies have happened due to the reveries that have been put out by Ford. And what happens is when you wipe them and give them a new storyline, which Ford has been doing, he's been doing all these crazy new storylines, that there's this overload that happens where the reveries overwrite each other to an extent, can overwrite their moral code to prove their point. Once they wipe her, they do the same simulation, but she doesn't take any shit and just beats the fuck out of this dude. So much so that I don't know, one of the Hemsworth
Stubbs.
or whatever comes in, with a gun, and like she isn't backing down. He just has to shoot her.
Yeah, she doesn't listen to any commands or anything like that. So they basically they go through all the techno mumbo jumbo outside about the reveries giving conflicting programming, and the apparatuses were overloaded and overridden and all this stuff. But essentially what happens is Hale pins it on Bernard, thinking that Bernard will flip on Ford. He doesn't. Ford doesn't fess up. So Hale fires Bernard.
I was going to say, like, to kind of build up there, they do a nice little star swipe over to some recognition awards, and then they recognize him for fucking up.
That's not true.
No, it's not. It wasn't a slide. They straight up just fire Bernard in the spot.
You just had to tie in one last PowerPoint joke, you son of a bitch.
I did. Could I say this is also a PowerPoint term? Maybe they got the build wrong on those robots. Anyway,
I wonder if my sigh directly into the microphone is just gonna blow out somebody's speaker later.
I hope not. It felt pretty good. It felt pretty good.
Thanks,
felt
man.
realistic.
Okay, so Bernard and Teresa end up talking later, and he kind of he's like, that was so transparent. I could see through all of it. But then he basically says, like, listen, I know you were the one sending code out of the park. And he tells her how the reverie codes are creating variances, and they're now on the verge of real change, which she, I guess, on some small level understood that after the presentation. But now he has something that he needs to show her to kind of hammer that point in. And so they go up in the same elevator that I guess that he had gone up in last episode to go to Ford's childhood house, quote unquote.
Yes. I'm sorry, Teresa. Are you for real? Never meant to. No, he didn't immediately join. God damn it.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.
Yeah.
Never meant to. Why would I jump to that?
I don't know, because I started it, and we used to sing all the time on the show.
Okay, well, I mean, if anything, wouldn't it be loving an elevator, living it up as I'm going down? I say yeah!
All right. Anyway.
I just didn't get the song that you had chosen. That's all. I was confused by.
And I will say in my head it was perfect, and then once I started singing without any kind of key and not hearing the song probably in years, I realized this probably isn't readily apparent.
I am for real.
Never meant to get Bernard fired, but Ford is getting out of control.
That's not bad. Okay.
Okay.
It had the right amount of syllables. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on before we lose all of our listenership. Bernard and Teresa go up the elevator, and she's kind of defending her decision to steal information because Ford would destroy all the work, yada, yada. I get that. So they end up going to host boy Ford's house, and they're kind of walking around, and this is the moment. She says, "What's behind this door?" And what does he say, Mothman?
What door? And
Bum, bum, bum.
and I will say, like, if it weren't for reading Ryan's theory recently, I think I would have known something was up. But like him pointing out the fact that they've obviously shown robots just ignoring things, and like that picture being such a clear example of it. Because I remember watching it, and Julia says like, how did he not notice the door? And then I was like, because he's a fucking robot. She goes, what? And then we get to this next scene. They go down the stairs.
Wait, hold on. Before we move on from it, there's a cool little part because they're showing the camera right up on Bernard's face, and she's behind him, and she is over near where the door is. But in that shot, no door. There is no door, and it's all one shot, so it's completely tracked, no cutting. It follows Bernard as he kind of moving along, and then she says the line, "What's behind this door?" And then he looks back, and the camera swings back, and there is a door there all of a sudden. So it also explains how Ford just magically appeared last episode when Bernard was being attacked by Ford's host daddy. So I thought that was kind of like a cool little thing, because last episode was like, how the fuck did he just appear there all of a sudden? Well, he came out of the door that Bernard couldn't see.
Because of his programming.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. But okay.
So the moment they're downstairs, if you had rewatched and listened to this theory, you do realize this is that one room. If you hadn't though, you know something's up. And then the moment she grabs sketches and starts looking at it, I was like, one of them's going to be Bernard. And then they don't show you, but she has the reaction. I was like, it has to be. And Definitely. Then he shows her, and like you're just like, it's happening. What the fuck's up? And at the same time, especially since there's a maker making a new, like before you put two and two together, the inevitable that we get to, you have a feeling, and you're like, how bad is this gonna get? And then Ford shows up.
Yes, definitely. But keep in mind, there is a host being synthesized in the background. So, Ford shows up. There's just some great fucking lines here. First off,
amazing.
When she shows him the thing, he says the line, Bernard says, "It doesn't look like anything to me." So good.
Yep. And you're like, oh, fuck.
Yep. And thanks, Ryan. And then that's when Ford enters, and he's like, "They cannot see the things that will hurt them. I spared them that much."
Yeah, he does his, oh God. And then he's just like, Bernard is confused. It's heartbreaking, actually, to watch it. He doesn't say that, but I wanted to do the voice.
You're a fucking monster.
Yeah.
This is not how she sounds at all.
Not at all.
She, by the way, killed it in this episode.
Yeah.
Not trying to do a shitty pun, but like she was honestly very good. The portrayal, like the actual vulnerability, like not like some cheesy Hollywood wah scream, but like the actual just the no, like just like realizing that her death, like she is drawing her last breaths. Yeah,
she knows it. I mean, I think too, one of the things that's effective about it is one, she's already been threatened by Ford earlier in the diner or cafe or Olive Garden to the max, whatever it was. And where he's morphing the environment. So there's like this threat there. And then the fact that she also knows she's very clearly and obviously trying to push him out. And then that she's now down this secluded location. It's almost like she knows screaming won't do anything. And more than anything, she's just trying to look into Bernard's eyes, say no. And I think she's just hoping for self-awareness and sentience in that moment and that he just changes.
But the desperation in her voice, too, I think also belies the fact that she knows that that's not going to happen.
No, and to which he just like goes all Goodfellas. He takes his jacket off, takes off his tie, and he just gets ready for a beatdown.
And just a lot of great moments with Bernard here, like, and great subtle acting by the performer here, Jeffrey Wright. He's like, but I'm not one. I can't be. My wife, my son, they're real. I was a father. My poor boy. And then Ford just like turns him off.
Yeah. And then Ford goes into a theory about all human behavior, essentially just being peacock feathers. And he talks about all of our
I couldn't stop thinking this is you to a T right here that he's describing.
Yeah, I mean, just all of my culture, my arts, my comic collections.
The self-loathing, the anxiety, the guilt, the peacocking. It's all just a mating ritual for you.
All just to get my rocks off. All to come to a satisfying conclusion on air.
Come being the operative word. Mm-hmm. Oh, Jesus Christ, Mothman.
So, and anyway, this interesting theory, but he's just talking about how ultimately, all these things we go through, the human condition how much of it do we actually enjoy? We don't enjoy the self-loathing or the anxiety or the guilt or the hatred to an extent, yet the hosts are free, obviously
Under my control.
but outside of that, they're almost pure beings. I think of, I don't know, the analogy of fiction that kind of deals with angels and like, God made humans because they have free will, and they were almost the perfect form of angels, and angels were jealous even though they had all more the power. And this is kind of, I don't know, that being continued, almost going back. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
'Cause,
I get what you're saying. I mean, those are some pretty wide overarching themes that you're talking about there, but I get what you're saying. Like that is basically, that's something to draw from for this.
Yeah, because, it's like angels, obviously, to an extent. I mean, Lucifer and everything else. But the idea is that they don't really have much free will. They have to do what God says. They have these pre-programmed mindsets, almost like a robot. And then they envy man because of free will. And then Ford envies robots because, God, I don't know, that free will and like all these emotions. It's kind of too much.
Yeah, I mean, and you get where he's going with this. But there are a couple other little things here that I thought were interesting. First, he says that Bernard was not around in the Arnold days, which would make sense if Ryan's theory is correct with the Bernarnold, because obviously you wouldn't have a Bernard clone of Arnold or, host made in his likeness while he's alive. So there's that. And then also the part where she's like, do you think the board will stand for this? And he just laughs, just super creepy and confident, and he says the board will do nothing. They enjoy testing me for the sport of it, and that's when they do the situation demands a blood sacrifice.
And the blood sacrifice part is, I don't know, what bothers me the most, simply because the board member says the exact same thing, and then he says the board just likes to play with me, and you almost wonder, like, what is the real relationship there?
Well, and I kind of brought it up a little bit in our conversation with Ryan. In my mind, especially, we see him as he's going to kill Teresa right here, or have Bernard do it. A host is being fabricated in the background. She says, is this what happened with Arnold back in the day? And now, if our theory is correct, or in Ryan's, but Bernard is the clone of Arnold. What if he's making a clone of Teresa? And what if members of the board and other members at Delos and all sorts of people are basically ones that he has killed off over time and then replaced with synthesized or host versions? So what if the board now is filled with at least a few members, if not all of them, of like basically hosts that he has built to replace it? Like, how sinister is that?
I know, it's pretty fucking crazy. The only other,
just like my mind was racing at this point.
All the things that could be happen. Yeah, there's all these possibilities. The one place my mind went that I don't find to be all that likely, and I certainly am not going to go back and rewatch every episode and try to build a case for it, but since we did have that one episode where we saw the gleam in Ford's eyes.
Yes, that was last episode.
Almost robot style. I wonder if somehow Ford is a robot with Arnold's mind, and Ford was disposed of ages ago, and Arnold has been, basically changing everything.
Oh, the double cross.
Right? Like, wouldn't that be crazy if Ford was actually killed by Arnold, and then they just kept, he, basically, I don't know, framed himself, like faked his own death.
You're firing on a level way too deep for my little mind. This is when I went and saw Inception, which by the way is written by Jonathan Nolan, the creator of this year,
and his brother Christopher.
Yes, but Christopher's not involved with this. But that's why I specifically mentioned Jonathan. But when I went and saw that in theater, I was sitting next to a high school couple, and is probably 17, a boy and a girl, and she just keeps leaning over and going, "I don't get it. What is going on? Why is he here now? I don't get it." And he's just like explaining it very quiet. And I will say he was very polite, just trying to explain it throughout the movie. And there's probably 20-30 minutes left, and she asked it for like the 15th time, and he goes, "Just close your eyes, the movie will be over in a few minutes." And that's what your theory made me think, is like, you should have just told me, like, just close your eyes, the podcast will be over in about 10 minutes.
That or you know what, just put your hand on my totem.
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude.
Or is it
this
talisman?
You getting your rocks off again?
Or is it talisman? What is it?
Oh, I gotcha.
What? Yeah,
For them
just
to drop down levels.
Put your hand on my talisman, and you'll be able to conceptualize it all.
Jesus Christ. There was one other really good line here that I loved when he's like, I designed every part of this place. Did you really think I would let you take it from me? That was so good. Like the darkness in that moment.
Yeah. He's officially a villain.
Yeah, definitely Hannibal Lecter if Hannibal Lecter got away.
Yeah, because he's always been fairly sinister. The trailers had him that way. First episode, you weren't 100%.
It seems like there was always a little bit of gray to him, not necessarily black and white, but I don't know.
I don't know if you saw this. I put it on Twitter, but someone did a spoof like juxtaposing Jurassic Park and Westworld.
Oh yeah, is he John Hammond?
Yeah, he's John Hammond, which is like the most mild-mannered, nice British dude that just everything goes wrong. And that almost is the vibe you get after the first episode before anything sinister happens. But this was our initial impression, and it's definitely gone there. So, God, I'm excited for next week.
For sure. Okay, so that pretty much ends the episode for us. But let me ask you, where did this one sit in like the pantheon of Westworlds for you so far?
This scene, like this storyline, is one of my favorite ones. I honestly was fairly like bored by Dolores and William and thought the acting was legitimately bad in their emotional moment. Like it just didn't work for me. The dialogue, the lighting, the music, nothing. The Maeve storyline I enjoy just because of where it's going. But it did have that like, really, they're taking another walk throughout here. So those are things that sullied otherwise what is my single favorite I don't know, the culmination of like these theories and all these other things. This was my favorite moment of the series.
The highs of this episode were the highest so far. Still, to me, maybe the first episode just for the
overall
experience and the immersiveness of
the
being
world.
Put into the world. But this episode was fucking fantastic. So.
And it's the first, like, you think of like Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, some of these big heavy hitters always having these surprise deaths, but they're not, the reason they matter is they don't seem meaningless or like not necessarily even shock value. Like you care. This was one of those moments.
Yes, agreed. So again, we want to thank FireFan for sponsoring the episode today. And thank you to Ryan from Reddit for joining, and to all the new listeners, thank you very much for following, and obviously the old listeners too. You basically are the ones that keep us going on this. You can check us out: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit. Email us at boobtubebuddies@gmail.com. We want to hear from you guys, especially with a show like this. Like, it's just makes it so much better to have a conversation, and we will shout you out. We'll make sure you're a part of the show. And
hell, we might even interview you now.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of our MO. So anyway, Mothman, that does it for me. Unless you have something else, why don't you tie a bow on this sexy bitch?
I have one last thought I'll leave you all with before we say goodnight. And that would be that if you have like a cheating spouse or something, the silver lining in all this is they might just be a robot.
Okay. Really took it to a dark and specific place there.
That's the silver lining.
Yeah, I guess so. But you could put it in a million different. You could say, hey, if you have an asshole who's your podcast co-host that doesn't give you enough gratitude or credit or adulation, you might just be a robot.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be relevant to what we were talking about. Whereas Bernard had like a wife that he was cheating on Teresa with, but all programmed.
But I thought that was like his ex-wife anyway.
Didn't he talk to her in like recent memory about the dead kid and all that?
Yeah, but to me it seemed like they drifted apart after the kid had died.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think they got a divorce though, so he's still cheating. So anyway, how about that silver lining? We'll see you next week, little buddies.
Well put.